The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Phil Kirkbride and today joined by Gav Buckland, Sam Carroll and Dave Prenitce, who is due the fat over all the major talking points at Goodison Park. And yet again, the major talking point is the managerial situation, pushing a week since Marco Silva was sacked and still no permanent replacement in place. Lots of names, lots of rumours. But all we do know for certain is that temporary boss Duncan Ferguson remains in that position and looking likely to take charge of the team on Sunday at Old Trafford for the game with Manchester United. Before we come on to the names, those who've pulled out, those who look like they may be interested, and those who have just been chucked into the mix for good measure, we'll speak about Duncan's first game in charge, and how well it went. Preno, you were at Goodison. It could not have gone any better, could it?
Just going to say that couldn't have been better. You know, we sat in the same room on the Friday and we said we don't know quite what to expect. We knew we would get the fans on side, which was a positive after the negativity of the previous home game. We didn't know quite what he would bring to the table in terms of tactical awareness, acumen, ability to motivate players, etc. Ticked every box, didn't he? Got the flying start that we needed. What Sidibe lacks defensively, he's got going forward, and great quality cross, great quality finish from Richarlison, and that was it. Then it was like light in the blue touch paper. The place was just bouncing. And again, what we said last Friday when we were mulling over Marco Silva's round, we said how many of his games were memorable. How many would you look back on and say, oh, that was a great day, that was a great day. Arguably two. Straight away, that was a memorable Goodison occasion. So it was an absolute privilege to be there. The atmosphere was brilliant. The fallout was brilliant. Just a great day. And if anything, Duncan's bought the board a little bit of time now because he's shown that he can get a reaction out of the players. So obviously different kettle of fish going to Old Trafford and trying to get a reaction from them, but equally that urgency might not be quite as acute to make an appointment as it had been Saturday morning last week.
Sam, what were your thoughts going into the early kickoff then, and with Duncan in the dugout? Did you expect a reaction or the level of reaction that he got from the players?
No, I don't think I did. And to be honest, I think I'd just kind of given up on this group of players, really. I think with some of the performances, it was very concerning that I don't really think, especially now when you look at the reaction, some players had certainly, and obviously you can't take a lot from posts on social media, but a good portion of the Everton players did seem to be generally quite gutted that Silva had left, and so this wasn't a manager really that, like what happened with Martinez and Koeman, I wouldn't really say the majority had down tools on him, and they were still turning in performances like the humiliating one they did at Anfield, and I just couldn't see how we were going to beat a team like Chelsea, and but there was just something from the first whistle, wasn't it? And again, it was great to score early, but everyone was putting the body on the line. Everyone was throwing the tackles in. Morgan Schneiderlin hasn't had a game like that for Everton since the first.
I'm going to say forever. I think
probably. He hasn't had a game like that for Everton since we first signed him, and he had that brilliant kind of second half to the season under Ronald Koeman. Richarlison, I think I'd kind of said it early on in the season, but he's now Everton's talisman. Do you know what I mean? For a 22-year-old, but he's not just a talisman in terms of the goals he scored, and he's a talisman in terms of you're knackered just watching him sometimes in the effort he puts in. I remember, obviously I was in the office here on Saturday and watching the game on telly, but he was just seemingly everywhere. And you just don't get that from many of the other forwards, and I think Calvert-Lewin came out and said, he wanted to repay Ferguson for all the work he's put in over the three seasons. You're seeing that Tom Davis was also straight over to him. It seems like for all these kind of rumours that get spread around and for all these kind of words in the stands and on social media about how, Ferguson's been part of these failed regimes, it seems like for the players, he's a fairly popular character. And as a manager, he seemingly has something there. And he spoke after the game about how the game plan was to push them out wide. And I think it worked. Chelsea only really had chances going down at the full-backs, and we had a few nervy moments, but you're always going to do that when you play against a team in the top four. So yeah, an unbelievable reaction, and as Prem said, whether you can get that again at Old Trafford remains to be seen. But what a day for Ferguson and everyone involved.
Gav, why do you think, or how do you think Duncan was able to yield such a reaction in what was less than 48 hours with the players? Or certainly one training session and a couple of meetings?
Force of personality, I would imagine. I mean, he's a physically imposing character, which helps, doesn't it, really?
Suggesting they were intimidated by it.
No, but it helps, though, doesn't it? He's got a... We know Duncan, he's got a reputation, hasn't he? And I think that can help you. I mean, as long as you use that in a positive way, rather than intimidate people. But, he has... I think, obviously, picking up on Sam's things, he's obviously learnt a lot in his sort of 6 years or something like that, under 3 or 4 different regimes. He's obviously learnt a lot in that time. And it probably helped that he just had a day with the players, give them that short, sharp message. If he'd had a week, it might have been slightly different. And I thought, I was surprised, because likewise to Dave on Friday, and I'm picking up on Sam's point as well, that the players hadn't really down tools, and I said under the previous manager, and I said on Friday that it was going to be really difficult I could see about really getting a real upbeat performance, but he did, and I did say if he set up well, that I'd give him a chance, and he set up well as well, and he changed things during the game as well. So that reflected well on him, and fair play, he ticked every box and then some, didn't he? Really, he even looked the part on the on the touchline, which helps. This is one of the we've talked to one of our previous Everton managers. He just looked the part, didn't he?
His game management was decent as well. I mean, imagine the reaction if Marco Silva had taken Richarlison off and brought, sort of Tom Davis on. Oh, here we go. Sort of trying to, sort of hold on to, the 2-1 lead. It raised eyebrows, because Richarlison was playing really well, and he looked pretty crestfallen, to be honest, sort of being told to come off with 20 minutes to go. But like you say about force of personality, Duncan has that authority and that presence to be able to do that. And then Davis played in a more advanced position than we thought, and ultimately, played a role in the decisive third goal. So his switches worked. That's not going to happen, so every time.
That's the thing, though, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt, but it kind of felt like everything that could go wrong for Marco, especially towards the end, was going wrong.
Yeah.
These changes that Duncan made, going 4-4-2, going quite direct, bringing Dave, they all had the potential to go massively wrong. But everything that could have went right on the day, and in terms of player performance every player being at 100% didn't it? And I think kind of in a way that kind of maybe, obviously, in the short term proved the decision a little bit maybe right. Maybe it did just seemingly come to the end with Silva that for all the kind of trying in the world, things just weren't coming off for him at all, were they?
I'm a big believer in the old adage about making your own luck as well. We got, I wouldn't say got lucky, so Chelsea had a couple of, opportunities, couple of, crosses fizzed across the box. You thought, whoa, that could have, ended differently. But equally, Calvert-Lewin missed a good chance in the first half. Yeah. Everton made their luck by pressing, by being intense, by having a real aggression, controlled aggression to the performance, which hadn't been there. Certainly hadn't been there on Wednesday at Anfield in the derby, which for 20 minutes Liverpool did what they wanted. And it was there. And so when you do that, when you're at it, so when you're pressing and you're forcing opponents into mistakes, you tend to get a bit lucky, because you're making things happen. So, you could say that, we're fortunate in some respects. And Marco was very, very unfortunate in a lot of the things that went wrong for him, with injuries, with VAR decisions. But I think Everton deserved what they got at the weekend.
It's been a long time as well since we've seen that kind of... There was that little period of play, wasn't it? And it didn't lead to a goal. It didn't really lead to anything. But there was a succession of 4 or 5 players pressing. And I think we eventually took the ball off Chelsea, or it was a free kick or a throw-in, or, the play kind of broke up. And the stadium just erupted, didn't it? Because at the end of the day... the Goodison, whatever you say about it, it still has to feed off the players, kind of at the very least putting the effort in, doesn't it? And that has been, I just think that maybe was the thing that was missing for too long. And I think, when the crowd and the players and the manager work in tandem the way it did on Saturday, I honestly don't know if any team could beat us at Goodison, and that's what we showed at the back end of last season, and that's why we were so positive about this new season. And unfortunately, it just didn't pan out that way.
Gav, it looks very much like that Duncan will be in the dugout at Old Trafford and quite possibly, in the dugout for next Wednesday against Leicester. Let's see on that one. But how sustainable, first of all, are those tactics? Now, I'm not for 1 second suggesting that's all Duncan's got in his locker.
No.
But I'm just saying it got a reaction on Saturday at Goodison. It was almost felt like it was the perfect setup and it was the perfect approach. Can we play that way at Old Trafford? Can we play that way going forward?
You can play 4-4-2 at Old Trafford. I mean, when you're away from home, it's a slightly different game, isn't it? It's a bit more cat and mouse, isn't it? So I think it probably sit back a bit more away from home and just see how it pans out. If you're talking about specifically about Man United, as we see it on Saturday, they've got a hell of a lot of pace on the break. So what you don't want to do is get caught out there. So you've got to keep your shape defensively. So it's tactics are sustainable. Whether you get that intensity,
because you said something interesting in your first remarks early on, that in that short space of time Duncan had between being told he's getting the job temporarily to the game was a perfect, short, sharp, get your message across.
Yeah.
It might be different with a week. So they
absolutely
came back in on Tuesday. It's now Wednesday afternoon. We're recording this, going in Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Have you got concerns that we might slip back into some of the old habits, or what you?
No, not concerns. But it'll be a different game. I mean, Man United are flying, aren't they, at the moment? 2 big wins, but they do tend to struggle against the teams lower down, strangely enough. So I haven't got concerns. The concern I've got really around this week and the players is the uncertainty around the manager. Because it can't be a great atmosphere if you're the coach and players when you don't really know what's going on, which we'll talk about later. But no, keep 4-4-2, which you used to. Tactically, I expect a similar type of performance to adapt to United's strengths. But you can't play intense football over a period of time. It's that eventually you'll implode then, won't you? You have to have something else in your locker, but certainly in the short term, yeah.
Preno, it would be sort of my sort of preference, perhaps, that, as you mentioned, the win over Saturday's bought the board some time. Yeah. And I think the way that we played against Chelsea, if we could replicate that atmosphere, that intensity, that pressure, would be perfect for Wednesday against Leicester City in the cup. That very much that cup tie atmosphere and feel, wasn't there? But how sustainable is this, and how long can Duncan go on as temporary coach? Because how emotionally invested he is in this club and in the job. He joked afterwards. He said, "I don't think I can go through that again," and laughed. But probably behind the laugh was a degree of seriousness. Yeah. Do you sense that because he is so emotionally invested in it, and he felt the pressure of trying to deliver a victory on Saturday, that you could get to, it's not sustainable beyond maybe 2 more games? And actually, although the board have got more time, there is a necessity to get something permanently.
It's a difficult one to quantify, because Sunday's opponents, Man United, discovered that when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in and had this astonishing run of success, which lasted best part of a couple of months. He got dead lucky. I mean, PSG, how they won that game, I have no idea. But, that was a period that extended for several months and ultimately got him the job permanently. Yeah. And then it, started to fall apart. But, they've been up and down this season. There have been occasions, as they showed last weekend, where they can still turn it on. Could Duncan get a similar reaction from the players? I don't really see why not, because it's, like Gavin said before, force of personality. And when you've got a manager that is clearly shows how much it matters to him, and he's behaving the way he does on the touchline, the players automatically, so it's contagious, so the players see that and feel it, as do the fans. Jurgen Klopp gets so much flack, so amongst Evertonians for the way he behaves on the touchline, but the players clearly love it. And, so having a manager in there who's quite demonstrative, who clearly has the same aims and ambitions as you, and, behaves like that, can just add that little extra percentage point or two, to your performance. So, going forward, it's going to be difficult. Obviously, it's such a tough run of games in December. United, absolutely bouncing after that win last weekend. Very, very tough place to go anyway. And in Leicester, the second best team in the country at the moment, and playing some really good football. But, the atmosphere will be something else on Wednesday, and it's a one-off occasion. Everton were very unfortunate not to get a result against them only about a fortnight ago, when Leicester were flying just as well. So absolutely no reason why that can't be, sort of big night next Wednesday. And then, who knows? But it depends on who's available. If there's a top quality manager available at the moment who could be appointed, and there is, after what happened in Naples last night, Everton would be silly not to make an appointment as quickly as humanly possible. If so Carlo Ancelotti wants to come to Merseyside. I mean, clearly he wants to come back to England. We're led to believe that Arsenal aren't quite as enthusiastic about bringing him in, which baffles me, to be honest, because he's one of the best coaches in the world. But if an A-list coach like that is available, you'd want him in your football club sooner rather than later. If that's not a possibility, well, I don't see any reason why Duncan couldn't continue for sort of several weeks yet.
Just stay with you, Prenitce, and just stay on Duncan before we bring the conversation back on to Ancelotti. What did you make of Duncan's revelation that he wore an old watch of Howard's?
Oh, it was quite poignant, quite spine-tingling. It was, we know how close Duncan and Howard were. Howard did a column with us, so every week for years. Obviously Duncan doesn't speak to the media. I don't know why, because he spoke so well and so eloquently and so articulately after the game. We've been missing out for a long time. So on the way he conducts himself. But we knew how close they were. I know that he keeps in touch with Lily, so Howard's wife, so they see each other, so often. And I thought it was quite fitting that he had a little part of Howard with him. The piece I did I wrote it Saturday night actually, because I was still buzzing after the game, and talked about Howard would be looking down, sort of thinking that'll do, son, looking at, and the 2 goals, the second half goal scored by a number 9 in the stand that bears Howard's name. It was all kind of fitting. So then to learn subsequently that he had Howard's old watch on his wrist, it was lovely. It was just a beautiful story. It will have meant a lot to Lily. It will have meant a lot to Duncan that he was there, and it just shows that Everton does have this family feel to it, really. I know people laugh about it saying it's sentimental nonsense, but it isn't. There is like a real family feel to Everton Football Club. And, so Howard is the best manager we've ever had. And so it's quite nice to think that, a little part of him, was with the current manager there on the day. It was a lovely story. And
Duncan
didn't give it up as a way of manipulating the media, or as a way of sort of
I
trying
actually asked him about his sweatband on his wrist, and then he just went off and decided to tell us this story.
Exactly, but it came from the heart. It was genuine, as so much about Duncan Ferguson is. It was a beautiful story, and I loved it. Really did love it. Yeah.
Can I just add another point about Ferguson? Is by doing so well on Saturday, and we don't know how long it's going to last for this term. He has made it difficult, hasn't he, for the next manager coming in? Well, in that, it takes a very brave manager to come in, just generally, and say to Duncan, "Listen, you haven't got a job here because I want to bring my own coaching team in." That's in more ways than one. And so, the problem you've got then is if the coach, because he's such a popular figure, and he added to his reputation on Saturday. If a new manager came in and said the first thing they were getting rid of Duncan Ferguson, that's actually, in terms of connecting with supporters, that's not the not the best thing to do. And then the other side of the coin is, if he's sitting on the bench and we're struggling, what the first thing supporters are going to say, and so there's a bit of an issue there that actually is created. It's a nice issue in some respects. Yeah. But it's his shadow there, isn't it?
But what Duncan said afterwards, I think, nailed that a little bit, where he said that I'm not ready yet. So I'm here as long as they want me, but I'm not ready to be a full-time manager yet. I think clearly the way he can motivate players hasn't been utilised to its fullest extent. We're told that so other managers during his time there have marginalised him or have not allowed him to speak in the dressing room. And you'd imagine that a new manager comes in, having witnessed what happened on Saturday, it would be a fool not to use those motivational powers.
Yeah, that's what you do. Yeah. And he didn't do himself any harm just within the wider game. If he was looking for jobs outside of Everton, he didn't do himself any harm on Saturday, and indeed may add to that sort of reputation in the next few weeks.
And so adding to that, Gav, in terms of something I've been thinking about for a number of weeks almost, when we felt like there could be change in the air. Not only as the result and the performance perhaps, let's say, put managers off, but maybe made them a bit more reluctant to take over right now, if so to speak. But the run of games before Christmas, if you're a new manager, do you want to be taking the team over at Old Trafford in a big quarter-final and then at home to Arsenal all before Christmas? Or are you just keeping your powder dry going, give me Burnley at home, please?
Then Man City away at some point, isn't it?
And
then Liverpool away, yeah. So depends how much you want.
Get two games where you think, push comes to shove, we should be picking up some decent points.
Depends how much you want the job, though, doesn't it, Phil? If you want the job, you'd take it any time, wouldn't you?
I'm just saying that some,
But there'd be a few would be, and clubs do that. Man City did it when he sacked Hughes, didn't he? they let Hughes have all the difficult fixtures and then give Mancini like 6 or 7 games where he could win, on the spin, which he did. So clubs and managers are cognizant of that. That may be the case, and it may be best for the club while they got them. Leicester next week is a massive game. You probably, after what you see him from last Saturday, you probably want Duncan in charge. I don't know if that's counterintuitive, but
that's what I feel.
You might want Duncan in charge of that game.
Yes, I agree.
Goodison delights, big game, big rewards, semi-final. If you're thinking actually
to sign off, imagine for Duncan to sign off with a victory there.
Yeah, so
he took us to the semi.
You may whatever happens on Saturday, you might say, well, actually, we might even leave this in a couple of weeks. And anything that you do, player-wise or manager-wise, just before Christmas, or anything in your life is before Christmas is difficult, isn't it?
Sam, let's come back to Ancelotti. Prenitce spoke in very complimentary terms about him. Would you like to see Carlo Ancelotti become the new manager of Everton?
Yeah, why not? All right, innit? Got a few Champions Leagues under his belt.
One of only 4 managers to have won 3 Champions Leagues with 2 different clubs as well. Double in this country. Oh, he's an A-list manager. There aren't many out there who can match his track record, and he's 59. He's not.
We have no.
He's an A-list manager, and I'll put this to both of you then. He's an A-list manager. Playing devil's advocate, we don't have an A-list squad.
We don't have an A-list squad, but we certainly have a squad and a budget that Carlo Ancelotti.
Do we have a budget?
I'm not too sure, but I think if Mashidi is kind of still keen on completing his vision at Everton, then I don't see why we wouldn't back a new manager, and I don't see why, if he wanted to create this kind of Hollywood of football in the Northwest, what he kind of said when we appointed Koeman, then this is time, because at the end of the day, for whatever you say, I don't think Koeman ever really was the Hollywood of football, and Silva certainly wasn't when he was first appointed. There was hope that he could maybe grow into that, and unfortunately that didn't work out. There's got to be a change of approach somewhere, hasn't there? And as Prenitce was saying, if an A-list manager becomes available and he wants to manage Everton, I think, okay, there's no guarantee of success at the moment with any manager, really, I don't think. And certainly not with Everton's squad and the deficiencies that have been showing up so far this season. But, our last appointments have certainly not been A-list managers, and I think that is certainly what, I think because, I wouldn't say we got lucky with Moyes, but, I think because it worked out for the time incredibly well, taking David from the Championship, and then, we tried to kind of do something similar with Roberto Martinez in terms of, a popular kind of manager who'd done okay with Wigan, but obviously he'd been relegated, and then Koeman had kind of middled out and got Southampton into Europe, but no one had this kind of glowing CV that Ancelotti does. So it would just be amazing as an Evertonian of my age who has never seen us win anything to have Carlo Ancelotti as the Everton manager. So I think it'd be some task to get him. Obviously Arsenal looking for a manager at the same time, but it would just show such ambition and send a real message out there. I don't think for 1 minute if we got him he'd be here for 10 years, but I think he is the kind of imagine him walking into the dressing room. There wouldn't be no messing around there, I don't think, and I think he would genuinely get the best out of us. As you're saying, that might be the only problem. Is he known for building squads? Is he known for building projects? No, probably not. Has he had the best last couple of years? No, probably not. But he is an absolute proven winner and one of the best kind of options out there who ticks almost all of the boxes. And if it's not Ancelotti at the moment, then I just can't see who would come in, who we'd get mid-season. I think we would probably end up getting an interim and looking at it again in the summer.
You give the club profile. I mean, obviously in this room, so we all think of Everton as, the greatest team in the world. But you look at, where the club's profile has fallen over the last few years. And, much as we hate to admit it, we've suffered. So appointing a manager who's known all over the world as being one of the greatest managers, the game's seen, makes people sit up and take notice. Wow, what's happening at Everton? So what kind of football club is this? People in Europe, people on the other side of the world. It's just, there's no real negative to it at all, to be honest. This is all supposing that, he would want to come to Goodison Park. We don't know that yet. I must stress that fact. But for me, it would be a great appointment. We actually had to write a piece earlier this week about who we wanted to see come in. And I wrote in glowing terms about Ancelotti, and then ultimately opted for Diego Simeone because of the aggression that his football teams produce, and because he achieved, similar. In a city like Madrid, so where the poor relations, if you like, where he actually had the poor relations, so on level terms with Real Madrid, Champions League final against them, playing some really great in-your-face aggressive football, which is why I ultimately, opted for him. And he expressed an interest in the Everton project. Was it, when Marco Silva was approached? Doesn't necessarily mean he'd be interested in coming now, but. Two absolute A-list managers, which is what Everton should be looking at. Vitor Pereira has ruled himself out now, but to me that was another gamble. That was another manager like Marco Silva who achieved success in lower leagues, like Portugal and Greece, but had also some fairly sort of high-profile sort of failures as well. You're taking a risk, you're taking a gamble. Every managerial appointment is a gamble, but that gamble is lessened if you've got a manager that has been successful in a number of different places. And, so clearly Ancelotti has, maybe not Simeone, but, he's certainly been very, very successful at Atletico.
I honestly just think now has become the time for, and I think you wrote it last week, Phil, but I think the club would just win so much more favour if it was kind of just made quite widely known that Marcel Brands was going to choose the next manager, and whether that be for now, and if he couldn't get him now, that maybe Farhad and Bill Kenwright helped to appoint an interim in the meantime, and we went back to it in the summer. I just don't really see why. I don't feel like Vitor Pereira would have been someone that Marcel Brands would particularly have wanted himself, and I just don't see why the director of football, who's going to work in such close quarters with a manager every day, wouldn't be allowed to choose the new man. And I'd be really interested to kind of see who Marcel would go for. Obviously, names get swirled around social media, and 99.9% of them probably aren't true, but it'd be worrying for me if Marcel didn't have a massive part to play in picking this new manager. And I think I'd kind of stand by anyone he picked, instead of, as Dave saying, someone who could be perceived as a gamble and is just kind of thrown into it, and it's a case of Marcel meet this man and this man meet Marcel, and it's kind of starting all over again with potentially two different ideologies. So I think that's a part of the search that people are forgetting about, that there is this kind of middleman director of football kind of involved in it all as well, who needs to be kind of involved.
Yeah, I mean, my cards on the table here, I wouldn't have Ancelotti.
Okay, go on.
You touched on it there. He's not. I appreciate his CV. It's a fantastic CV. There's a clue there in his CV. He's only got 4 league titles, hasn't he? One of them's PSG, with all due respect to the French league. Now is and
one was in this country.
One was at Chelsea, but he's always managed big clubs and big.
Initially, Reggiana and Parma is where he made his name.
Yeah, but success. Yeah. He's a light touch manager, isn't he? So his 20 years of being characterised by managing big players and massaging their egos and getting the best out in big games. What he doesn't do and hasn't really done is he's created an atmosphere of bringing through young talent and seeing them develop through the squad, which is Sam's point there about Brands. I'd be interested to see what Brands, who's set set out his football strategy, how he would react to an appointment of Ancelotti, who in many respects is the complete opposite of what Brands wants to do as a director of football. I'm not disputing Ancelotti's CV. I'm not disputing his reputation within the game and what he'd do from a PR perspective, and and being newsworthy for the club. But for me, it goes back to what our football strategy is, and I don't see that sort of Brands and Ancelotti thing fitting, and
are you sort of saying if we'd rolled back to the summer of 2016, Martinez sacked, the way we were operating and the way maybe our finances looked, and Ancelotti would have been a more understandable fit then than it is now?
Probably, yeah. I think Benitez, we said that Benitez would have been the perfect fit then, maybe. We had more money to spend then what we'll have
but this
in
is
the next
what
12
I'm
months.
saying,
Yeah, absolutely. And also right at the start of Farhad's term, he would have had a big name in place which sends out its own message. As Sam said, Koeman, yeah, big name, but not that big a name. And for me, Ancelotti just wouldn't work at Everton from a playing perspective. But you don't know. Maybe he's got something to prove. and certainly get the respect of the players. And he has managed there before, ironically. So had he been sacked at Goodison once, hasn't he?
He's got his marching orders, yeah.
So
in the Goodison
maybe
corridors.
that might put him off. Last time I walked down this corridor, I got sacked. So I don't know. I appreciate the sort of PR arguments, but from a footballing perspective, I don't get it, and I'm not sure Brands would get it either.
So what would be the other fit? If he's not a fit, what kind of manager?
Well, if you want your Brands model, and what we need at the club at the moment of recruiting young players and getting the best out of them, selling for bigger fees.
You're looking at a young, ambitious manager.
Yeah, that's it.
Which
that's
is a
where
risk.
Silva was. Yeah, Silva was sort of in that category, wasn't he? And then that's it for me. I'm not sure whether Ancelotti would fit in, but
is there a, again, I'm just thinking out loud, is there a middle ground that you appoint Ancelotti, but his backroom staff has to be built with people who can work with young players to help?
Yeah, well, that's what the director of football is there for, isn't it? To create that like sort of relationship at all levels within the club, and that's what Brands is there for. So, Brands could make that work, but it'd be difficult to do. Carlo's 60, he's done 20 years now. You wonder, how many years you've got left at the top.
You can understand though, and you can understand supporters and people saying this is an opportunity that may never come back round for us until we're a Champions League team, whenever that would be, or so can you understand the thought process that we're going to strike while the iron's hot? He's just lost his job. There's an understanding he would be keen on a return to England. We've got to go for it. We may live to regret this decision.
I get that completely. And as Prenitce says, every appointment's got a risk element to it. But to me, I can't see it working for me. I tell you what it would be. Pleased, Moyes Keane. I would imagine he'd be pleased if Ancelotti came through the dressing room door. I think he'd be keen, but I just don't see it. But I do get the PR perspective, and at the moment we don't. Let's face it, there's not a lot of options out there, is it, that are available and we could bring in. So there's that angle to it. And unless Carlo's be able to show that he can change his ways after 20 odd years as a manager, I think it's going to be quite difficult at a time when we're not going to have a lot of money to spend.
This is probably the most time I can remember since ever watching footy in terms of just being a complete lack of managers and not because of the position, the kind of unique position Everton are in that, as a fan base and as a club historically, we should be kind of punching at least this season. Our aim was to kind of try and break into the top six. But our league finishes over the last few years haven't quite reflected that. So, we can't go out and say, right, this time we're going to go and get Simeone, we're going to go and get this fellow from, we can't quite get that kind of high level manager. But at the same time, the fans, seemingly from what you see on social media and here in the stands, they're not going to settle for a David Moyes type. They didn't settle for a Sam Allardyce type last time that came around. So, we are just in such a kind of a limbo of who to go for, and it is just possibly the biggest appointment, well, certainly the biggest appointment of Farhad Mashidi's reign and one of the biggest moments in Everton's history, I think, because at the end of the day, when did Tottenham's fortunes kind of start to turn permanently? When they got Pochettino. You look at the impact, as much as it's horrible to say, the Klopp's had on Liverpool. Guardiola's turned Manchester City into, one of the best teams the Premier League's ever seen. It all starts with getting the right manager, and it's shown time and time again. It's not, you look at every team who's having kind of subjective success this season, they got the right manager. You look at Wolves, they seemingly stumbled upon the right manager, but at the same time, what Everton have got to hope for is, it took Tottenham a long time, it took Liverpool a long time. It's taken a lot of teams, a few managers and quite a lot of ins and outs to get to that point, and hopefully Everton do hit upon the right one, but it's got to be sooner rather than later, because this kind of 18-month cycle we've stumbled upon, certainly for the last two kind of long-term managers we've had, is starting to grow frustrating. And I think why people turned so fast on Marco, because they just want someone to get it right and get the basics right and try and kind of get us competing where we think we should be, and that is obviously why it's the hardest decision out there, because at the moment there's no one really grabbing you who you can say would be an instant success for Everton.
So, Prenitce, all that being said, why don't the club, they've been bought a little bit of time by Duncan getting a victory, why don't they buy themselves even more time, buy Marcel even more time, and appoint an interim until the end of the season?
Because exactly the same criteria applies. What interim managers are available out there that you think would have, a significant impact? David Moyes is the obvious one, and I've sat in this room and I've said many times, so why I wouldn't be against that. But I don't know if I'm in a minority, but certainly, there's a divide amongst the Everton fan base, and an awful lot are so against the idea that I've heard plenty say he wouldn't go back to Goodison Park if he returned. But I don't understand it, because when he left in 2014, he left to a hero's farewell. The club was playing great football. We'd finished in the top 5-6 again. And he was given a really fond farewell. And did he really do that much wrong, subsequently, by trying to sign Leighton Baines and Marouane Fellaini? Except, the way in which he left Everton, negotiating behind the back, so left a bit of a sour taste. And then his record has been, shall we politely say, mixed. So since, I think he was harshly treated at Manchester United. Yeah. But, so certainly in Spain, it was a bit up and down. West Ham, we did a solid job. Sunderland, he did a dreadful job. But then again, most people seem to do dreadful jobs at Sunderland. I think he'd be a fairly, sort of safe pair of hands. But if it's going to divide the fan base so much, can we really think about that? So if we're going to be starting with a negative mindset straight away, I'm not so sure that is the right decision. So who else is out there for interim? Duncan. He himself has said he doesn't feel like he's quite ready for it just yet. That would probably be, so the most, so enthusiastically received. But after that, there aren't many managers available. So if there are top quality managers available who want the job, why not get it done now? So rather than mess around with interim appointments.
Is there any name that hasn't been mentioned or considered that you think we should be looking at?
Rafa put himself in the frame, didn't he, on Monday night? But that won't happen. There are people at the football club that won't even countenance that. I like Rafa as a manager, so I would take him all day long at Everton, but it's not going to happen. I don't know. Are there any names out there that haven't been discussed yet?
Emery was mentioned, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In dispatches, and understood that the club might have had a conversation with him.
Yeah.
Who was he?
Emery.
Right, yeah. He's spoken to him before. Yeah.
But apart from that, there's a lack of options available to us, isn't there? Really, who are in our sort of price range for about once.
So what? Again, just trying to sort of for the interest of debate, and what I said to Prenitce, there's a lack of options. So are we in danger? For whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, are in this position, are we in danger of rushing or appointing for appointing's sake?
Yeah, absolutely.
We
may have done that in the past.
But that's a worry, though, isn't it? Because you can't be doing that. No. It's such an important.
No, well, as Sam says, it is because you would expect this manager now, if they did a good job, to be there or thereabouts when we move ground, and we know what a seismic effect that can have on the club and the way it's run and operates. So you would expect any new manager to be there in 3 or 4 years' time. So it has to be well thought out, not just like in the short term, but the longer term of the challenge, because that's going to be a big challenge. So, as Sam said quite early, it is probably the most important managerial appointment, certainly in my lifetime. And you said that about Silva, so
you keep saying it.
Every 18 months we say it. Well, maybe it isn't. I would rather them took the time and got the best man to make a rushed appointment.
I think that's why, like what Prenitce was saying, probably wouldn't be against Moyes, but then at the same time, like what you were saying, Phil, if they did put Moyes in and they lost like the League Cup quarter final and then a few more games, then the atmosphere would probably be just as bad. So
got beat 3-0 Landfield in the FA Cup or something like that. Moyes' record there wasn't great, was it?
So it comes back to one of my earlier questions to Prenitce in terms of, say the club go, we're going to give ourselves to the end of the season. Physically, because given how much he put into that game on Saturday and how exhausted he was emotionally, mentally, physically, can Duncan last 9 months in the job because he's so involved in it? You know what I mean?
We're going to need some reserve ball boys.
He pours every ounce of himself into 90 minutes, and he looked. You know, he admitted he was exhausted by the experience.
Yeah, well, it's going to be emotionally draining, but once he sits back and takes stock and looks at it again, and there's probably going to be a little bit more support this time, then you may think, actually, I'm not so sure now. Maybe
that's what managers do. It's a stressful job, but you know, you look at. We seem to refer to him so often, but then again, they are only across the park. But you know, the way Klopp conducts himself every match, you know, he absolutely lives and breathes every minute of the game.
Jurgen didn't live and breathe Liverpool Football Club until he was appointed. Duncan has lived and breathed the football club for however, you know.
And he managed the Dortmund and Mainz, so he'd have, 10 years as manager before he went to Anfield. So slightly different.
I guess I'm just saying, are we asking too much of Duncan to say, look, can he take it till the end of the season? Of course he would say yes, because he'll never turn the football club down.
You don't have to ask that. It goes back to your question before, though, doesn't it? Is it not too much to ask him, say, listen, Duncan, you take the next 2 or 3 games
and just carry on
Christmas,
right? Okay.
Because actually, it's not a great time to appoint a manager. We'd like to have a bit of time out and
do it step by step. 2 or 3 game chunks each time.
Maybe we don't have to make a decision. Maybe, and we can just say, 3 or 4 games. Can you just take us through while we're
and let's take stock.
Yeah, because I think it's not only the manager that they need to think about. It's what. The brands thing, isn't it? This is the big concern with supporters quite rightly this week, isn't it? Who's choosing the manager? Now, regardless about what you think is who should be choosing it. The one thing we need to decide on is what is our strategy going to be footballing wise, the type of players that we want to bring in, etc. And so we need to think about that as well. And and so there needs to be a lot of conversations around that, which I don't think necessarily we've nailed down previously. And all that points to me to saying to Duncan, listen, maybe take us into the new year. Go out with a win at Anfield in the cup. That'll, that, and then we'll take it in there, because you then get. They've got that break, haven't they? Is it January?
Feb, isn't it?
Feb, yeah. So it slows down a little bit in the new year, doesn't it? With the cups and that break, and I think they may choose that time to choose.
Heaven forbid, and obviously we still look at a very concertina league table. But what happens if after that period, Gav, hypothetically, takes to the end of the January dunk, and he hasn't been able to get the same reaction, and we find ourselves in the bottom 3?
Well, that's when we need, but we've given our breathing space then, haven't we? We've given ourselves 6 weeks to choose a new manager. Yeah. So that's when you would expect a new manager to come in.
Yeah.
I think that we don't need to make an interim or permanent appointment at this stage for me. We just tell Duncan just to keep it going for a few weeks.
Keep the pot boiling, so to speak. Chaps, that's where we'll finish today's podcast. Thank you very much for your company. Excellent as always, and thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again around the table on Friday. Post-press conference, we'll be expecting that to be given by Duncan Ferguson probably on Friday. So we will reconvene on Friday afternoon and look ahead to Sunday's trip to Old Trafford. But for now, thank you very much, and thank you. You've been listening to the Royal Blue Podcast.
The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.